This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
Everyone, this is The Other Side of Midnight. These are the Swan Silvertones singing here, one of the great gospel groups of all time. Have you read the Gospels? Well, if you are a student in Oklahoma, you will soon be required to read it. Noam Laden brought this story up either yesterday or the day before, I don't recall, in this hour. And I've been thinking about it a lot before talking about it because I'm one of those rare people on radio that at least occasionally tries to think about a story before reacting to it or giving my opinion on it. If you're not up on this, Oklahoma's top education official, the superintendent, superintendent, has ordered public schools to incorporate the Bible into lessons for grades 5 through 12. And they say this is the latest effort by conservatives to incorporate religion into classrooms. And the directive drew immediate condemnation from civil rights groups and from supporters of the separation of church and state, with some calling it an abuse of power and a violation of the U.S. Constitution. The order sent to districts across the state by Republican State Superintendent Ryan Walters says adherence to the mandate is compulsory and immediate and strict compliance is expected. Here is Ryan Walters.
The left, they can be offended, they can be mad, they can be upset, but what they can't do is they can't rewrite history. We are going to show the countless citations. The Bible was cited more than any other document in the 1600s, 1700s political writings. It is clearly a momentous historical source. We will bring it back to our schools.
And the Oklahoma law already explicitly allows Bibles in the classroom, and it lets teachers use them in instruction. But it's not clear, apparently, if Walters has the authority to mandate that schools teach it. State law says individual school districts have the authority to decide on instruction, curriculum, reading lists, instructional materials, and textbook. Now, I have a few thoughts on this. One, okay, I like to defer to the local school district on curriculum issues. Because, I'm a believer that local control is good. And if you don't like what's going on in your local school district, you could vote for new members of the school board or run for school board yourself. I have to say, and I say this as someone that was dead set against what Louisiana is trying to do in posting the 10 Commandments in every classroom. That's kindergarten through 12th grade. I've thought about this a lot, and maybe it's because I attended New York City public schools and they wouldn't even allow any sort of mention of the Bible in New York City public schools. And yet there were all sorts of instances on standardized tests, on advanced placement tests, on all sorts of things that you need to know in life where you're kind of expected to know everything in the Bible. Now, I did, not everything, but at least the key parts of it. I did go to catechism, so my biblical knowledge was better than I think most. But even with that, I really felt a little bit of a disadvantage because it was amazing to me how often biblical references would pop up in life, and I never learned them in school, in public school. And because of that, I actually think this is a very good idea. Speaking from, look, I believe in a separation of church and state. I don't believe that there should be things like chaplains as counselors in school. I don't think there should be prayer in schools. I think that schools should be secular institutions. But as long as the Bible is being taught in a secular manner, I think it should be taught in every school. The Bible is a significant historical document that's influenced so many different aspects of Western civilization, including literature, art, law, politics. And teaching about the Bible in that context, as long as nobody is coming out and saying you have to worship this God, or you have to adhere to these commandments, or this is the only truth, the light, and the way. It provides students with an understanding of historical and cultural developments. The Bible is considered one of the most influential literary works in history, and studying it can help students understand references in classic and contemporary literature. It improves their literary analysis skills and cultural literacy. If you want to comment on this, you could feel free to do so. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. Someone who disagrees is Rachel Laser, who is with Americans United for the Separation of Church and State.
It's not about teaching religion as an inspiration for literature at times, or art, and that's all permissible, or teaching comparative religion. This is about claiming the Christian nationalist myth that America is a Christian country. And this is also about preaching and not teaching, because when Ryan Walters announced the policy, he made clear that he was requiring teachers to have the Bible in every classroom and, quote, to teach from it. That's not education. That's indoctrination, and it's unconstitutional.
Well, look, if it's indoctrination, then I agree. Then it is unconstitutional. But if it's just going to be used to draw lessons from it, I have no objection to that at all. And, I raised this. I mentioned that with Noam Laden when he brought this up the other day. And someone who is religious wrote to me and said that what I said about teaching the Bible as literature is almost as bad as the pro-religious arguments against having the Ten Commandments on the walls. Why? Because to those who believe the Bible is not literature, it's scripture. It's the literal word of our Lord in heaven and his students, prophets, and kings. A woman who hasn't bathed in ritual waters is going to stand before a classroom of children and read from his book. Sacrilege. Some man with an uncovered head is going to stand in a government schoolhouse and speak the Holy Bible. Sacrilege. I completely disagree. I think there's an enormous amount of education from the Bible. You get enhanced cultural literacy. And this is compliant with the First Amendment. As long as the instruction is secular and academic, focusing on the Bible as a historical and literary text, that's the distinction, rather than a religious one, it adheres to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. I don't think it's okay for a teacher to get in, to a 10th grade classroom and say, these are true stories. I think it has to be taught, well, there are some people that believe this. I mean, because think about it, when you're learning about, say, the Roman Empire, and you're learning about Constantine choosing to become, people may bristle at that description, becoming a Christian and his inspiration to become a Christian. Don't you think it would help to have at least some sort of, knowledge of what Christianity actually believes in? Just the same way I don't have an issue teaching the Quran. as literature, or the Book of Mormon as literature. I don't think there's literature that has affected more people throughout the history of human civilization than the Bible. So previous Supreme Court decisions have indicated that teaching the Bible in a non-religious manner, that's the key, for its literary and historical value is permissible. There was a case in 1963, Abingdon School District versus Shemp, that found that. Understanding the Bible and the content that's in the Bible, it can enhance students' cultural literacy. It helps them comprehend references in art, literature, music, even popular culture. And you know what? It pops up as a category on Jeopardy constantly. And on Jeopardy, they're not preaching. They cover it as an academic work. Don't you think it would help when you're on Jeopardy to have at least some educational grounding in it? I do. I think studying the Bible alongside other religious and historical texts, it can foster critical thinking, comparative analysis skills, and encourage students to understand diverse perspectives. 646-720-0635. I mentioned Constantine. The Bible has significantly influenced all sorts of historical events, all sorts of legal events, all sorts of the moral frameworks of different civilizations. A secular society and a secular study of the Bible's impact can absolutely help students better understand the development of modern societies and legal principles. So incorporating the Bible in a secular, that's the emphasis that, look, I want to be very clear. I do think Ryan Walters is doing this to pander to the religious right. I do think he's doing that. But even if that's his goal, as it is, I think, the goal of the governor of Louisiana, that doesn't mean there's not some merit to this. He can do the right thing for a pandering wrong reason. Every politician panders. I think you know that. But even just in this country, knowledge of the Bible can contribute to students' understanding of all sorts of different aspects of American civil and civic life, including the frame of the Constitution, the evolution of laws and societal norms. So by focusing on the Bible's historical, literary, and cultural significance, and ensuring that the instruction is purely secular, I can't stress that enough, it deserves to be included in a curriculum without violating any constitutional principles or promoting religious doctrine. For instance, I just looked this up. There are so many phrases that we use every day that are from the Bible. I mentioned a couple with Noam the other day. The phrase, the writing on the wall, that's from the Bible. A drop in the bucket, that's from the Bible. The powers that be, by the skin of your teeth, all biblical phrases. Go the extra mile. The blind leading the blind, a wolf in sheep's clothing, to cast the first stone, the root of the matter, the salt of the earth, an eye for an eye, the apple of my eye, a fly in the ointment, scapegoat. These are all phrases and terms that have transcended their biblical origins to become integral parts of the English language. And I think that illustrates the Bible's enduring cultural and linguistic impact. Now, let me anticipate a question and respond to it before you ask it. How can you be for teaching the Bible in school and against posting the 10 Commandments in every classroom in Louisiana? And to me, I realize it may sound like it's the same kind of thing, and I think in both cases it's being done by pandering politicians, but I think they are quite different, actually. One is the age factor. I think for a first grader to see posted on the wall a commandment with no context and have to learn the hard way in the first grade or in kindergarten about working on a Sunday or adultery or coveting my neighbor's wife. Those are not conversations that I think I'm ready to have with a kindergartner or a first grader. But by the time you get to fifth grade, I think you can start incorporating the literary lessons of the Bible. But in Oklahoma, the directive emphasizes, supposedly, I mean, maybe Miss Laser is right, but I don't think she is. The directive emphasizes the Bible's role as a historical and cultural document. In Louisiana, posting the Ten Commandments in classrooms, it explicitly endorses a specific religious doctrine, which I think is seen as promoting religion. In Oklahoma, the Bible's inclusion is part of a broader curriculum that can include other literary texts. In Louisiana, the mandate to display the Ten Commandments, it does not involve any sort of broader educational purpose. It directly places a religious text in the classroom. In terms of the First Amendment, in Oklahoma, by teaching the Bible from a secular perspective, Oklahoma, they avoid that establishment clause of the First Amendment, which says you can't have an established religion. In Louisiana, requiring the display of the Ten Commandments is absolutely seen as an endorsement of a specific religion, which can, I mean, I know Eric Siegel disagreed, but I think there's a strong case to be made under existing court rulings that it's unconstitutional. So I do think it's quite different. I think one is being used for academic purposes. One is being used for devotional purposes. I think there's differences in terms of age appropriateness. I think there's differences in terms of flexibility and control. I think there's differences in terms of context. What do you think? 646-720-0635. You can bet there's going to be legal challenges to this, and I'm sure it's going to be something we're going to be talking about a great deal. 646-720-0635. Brian is in New Jersey. What's your view?
Yeah, good morning, Frank. I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching this in school. This country was founded under the principles of God, and we've gotten so far away from it.
But Brian, I mean, I think the way you frame that is exactly why so many people think this is unconstitutional. The country being founded by under the principles of God, as you say. It might be true, and I think other people would point out that a lot of the founding fathers were actually deists, but the religion shouldn't be a part of a secular public classroom. The reason I'm okay with teaching the Bible is because it's also a great literary work.
All right, well, even from the literary perspective, I think it's a good thing, and I think that kids today need some sort of foundation. There's no foundation. There's no morals, no values. Everybody runs amok today. And everywhere I go, this is a crazy story. But everybody I talk to, they're talking about this girl that went viral, this Hawk 2 girl. And I just think, that's what the world's obsessed with today. Just, things that aren't relevant, that mean nothing. People just want to be recognized for something, and people really need to get back to God. That's where it all starts and
see,
finishes.
Brian, listening to your call, it actually makes me want to be against this, because this has nothing to do with morality. This has nothing to do with getting back to God. That might be how some politicians are trying to sell this. This has to do with education. This has to do with teaching people about a work of history, a work of literature, a work that has inspired countless actions over thousands of years. So, I mean, we can have a debate about whether people need to get back to God or they don't. And, I'm a minister in the Universal Life Church, which is mostly a secular church. But I think whether they do or they don't, this is more about the education that comes with the Bible. 646-720-0635. Speaking of education, we're going to get into a discussion about technical education, CTE, and trade education with Mike Porcelli, who is a guy that is a master mechanic and has devoted the better part of his life to this cause. And he is trying to start a new American revolution on this front. He's going to join us in a bit. But 646-720-0635. Larry in Brooklyn, what do you think?
But Frank, my first point is, how do you know that the intent of the Oklahoma legislature was to make the Bible a secular subject just because it starts in the 5th grade? Have they expressed that specific intent?
Well, that's what the superintendent is saying. He's not saying that they're doing this to indoctrinate people. He's saying it's an indispensable historical and cultural touchstone. And he's saying, and I agree with this, without basic knowledge of it, Oklahoma students are unable to properly contextualize the foundation of our nation, which is why Oklahoma educational standards provide for its instruction.
Okay, but that's not necessarily preparing the kind of curriculum that you would do as chancellor of schools by making it in the Bible by basically neutering religion. I don't think that that's their intent. Their intent is just to simply introduce it in a grade where it's not going to be controversial as indoctrination as they're trying to do in Louisiana.
Well, I think I think people in different school districts may interpret the directive differently, and I think that's fine. I think the school district should have some flexibility in terms of curriculum. When I was in college, one of my favorite classes was a class that I took on Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I can tell you there was no preaching at all. We would study religious text, talk about the differences in the religious text, write about them, and explore them. I think it's a great thing for students to do.
Yeah, but you're talking about way advanced learning, way beyond the stage where kids are being formulated. I think this is intended to formulate the children and give them religion, actually. And contrary to what this woman, Rachel, I've got her last name, said, even if we adopt the notion that this is a Christian nation, which in fact it is, teaching children about the Christian Bible is not a commingling of church and state. Every Supreme Court decision has dissents. And if I were one of the justices, I don't know what the current precedent is, the operating precedent is, but I would say that intermingling church and state has to do with giving favor to one religion in a specific function, not teaching children.
No, well, I mean, I think if you, again, I'm not on the Supreme Court, and smarter people than me have had a lot of discussions about this. And so, I'm not going to solve it in the 40 seconds that we're talking about this here. But my reading of the First Amendment is when it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. I view that as being both public funding and sort of a public endorsement of religion. But I'll leave that to other constitutional scholars to decide what they meant by that First Amendment. The one thing, and thank you for the call, Larry, the one thing that I don't think you can escape is that the Bible is a pretty significant work of literature, and people should learn it. People should learn it not because they're going to worship Jesus or, be really inspired by the story of the burning bush or Rachel and the rug merchants. You should learn it because it's an important world historical document, period. 646-720-0635. Mike, what do you think?
Hey, I couldn't agree with you more about the value of the literary aspect of the scriptures. I remember as a kid learning the story of, in public school, learning the story of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon, and splitting the baby in two. Probably a little too graphic for kids in second grade at the time. But a story that stuck with me, my whole life, and also spoke of wisdom. It just happened to be a story of wisdom that came from the Bible.
Mike, and I'm going to let you make the rest of your point on a bridge, but just to piggyback on what you just said, I love that story of Solomon, and whenever I make a wish, throw a coin in the fountain or something like that, or make a wish on a birthday candle or something along those lines, my wish is always the same thing as what Solomon's wish was which was for wisdom. But that's a perfect example. I remember being in public school at the time that Seinfeld was on. And they had an episode where Kramer and Elaine are fighting over a bicycle, and they go to Newman, and Newman is the judge of who gets the bike, and he makes the decision to split the bike in half, and he uses the same sort of rationale that Solomon did, and Kramer and Elaine act out the parts of the same people that were fighting over the baby. Almost none of my classmates understood that was a biblical reference. And I thought at the time, we really are being shortchanged, and it's preventing us from even enjoying in full a great piece of pop culture like Seinfeld, because they don't know it's from the Bible. And it makes it such a deeper enjoyment of popular culture and entertainment even. Mike, go ahead. What was the other point that you were going to make?
No, the other thing I was going to say, too, you mentioned Constantine, and not just his conversion, but what the world was like, especially in the Roman Empire around up to about 300, 350, and what was going on there. And we talk so much about the history of Rome, right? Rome. Everybody wants to go to Rome, but so much of it is based on what happened in that first century, with what's recorded in the scriptures. Rome is what it is, not just because it's great buildings, but because of the history of what happened. And not to say that the Bible, in that sense, is a historical book, but there is obviously history that makes sense. Rome makes sense when you know a little bit of the Bible.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, too.
Fair enough. Now, Mike, you're a priest, I see here. Is that accurate? So
I am.
Do you have an issue with the way that I'd like the Bible to be taught, which is from a secular perspective?
I don't. And I know that there are probably some people who would, and other maybe ministers who would say, no, we should be teaching it. But I agree with the right place for it. I don't know that children should be taught any one religion. Obviously, it's constitutional.
Right, unless they're in Catholic school or yeshiva or something, or a madrasa.
Obviously,
right.
Yeah. But I do think that there is some value to know. I mean, how do you teach right and wrong without there being some kind of basis for something? How do you tell kids to be nice to one another when they're in school without there being some kind of foundation? I would say the Ten Commandments, I don't like that idea in courtrooms or in classrooms or anything like that. I think what you said earlier about it being sort of down everybody's throat. But I would have loved to see like Walmarts and Walgreens and CVS's that were getting just everything cleared out of them. It would have been nice to maybe somebody just put "Thou shalt not steal" above the doorway, coming in and going out. Just a reminder that we do have some kind of ethic, whether it's Christian ethic or just human ethic, that there are certain things that we do that are wrong and we should avoid them. I think we need a reminder of that every once in a while, though.
Mike,
I'm not saying in a classroom necessarily, but just in general.
Understood. Thank you. Mike Porcelli is waiting in the wings, but let me first say hello to David in the Boogie Down Bronx. Hi, David.
Yeah, good morning, Frank. Let me respectfully disagree with your last caller and also you. The intent in Oklahoma, as in Louisiana, is to get a case in front of the Supreme Court. You've heard of Project 2025. This is about bringing religion back into society. And what they're attempting to do, because they know they have a sympathetic court, they want to have more religion in our society, and they're using this to get it. And I would point out, and you kind of mentioned it, they're not teaching the Quran. They're not teaching from the Talmud. They're specifically the Bible. There's a reason for that. It's to preach Christianity. The head of the school system in Oklahoma has made that pretty much clear. He's changed his language in the past couple of days because of the uproar that's happened. But it's clear what the real agenda is here. And let's not sugarcoat it. Your last caller, who's a priest, I believe, he was saying, you need to have the Bible so people learn how to treat each other better. Listen, I went to Catholic school, all right? The Bible was taught every day, and people still treated me pretty bad based on my skin color. So this notion that religion somehow makes you a better person is not true. Let's not pretend what we're talking about here. We are not a religion. Someone said this is a Christian country. Many people in this country are Christian. Many people are not. I am not a Christian. Many of your callers and listeners are Jewish. Some are Muslim. Some are atheists. We should not have the Bible shoved down our throats. And that's what they're trying to do in Oklahoma. Don't be misled by what that guy said in recent days. Their agenda, he tried to send public school money to religious private schools. They tried that, and that might actually happen in Oklahoma. This is part of a larger agenda, and I think we need to have our eyes wide open.
No, David, I agree that it is part of a larger agenda, and I agree that there's an element of strategic legal challenges and stuff because of the current makeup of the Supreme Court. Even with that, though, and as I said, I do think the motive behind this is pandering politicians. Even with that, though, wouldn't you agree that there's a lot that can be learned from a cultural, literary, and historical perspective by studying the Bible?
Listen, when you say the word studying, I think that's where the issue might be. I am not against using the Bible as literature.
Great.
But we have to be very careful that we're not straying into the area of preaching religion. Because, again, in Oklahoma, Oklahoma is not New York. So, the interpretation there is different than what you think. And it's clear what they're trying to do. And I think we just need to be very careful, Frank.
Yeah, I'm all for being careful. But I also...
Religion is never a good thing.
Sorry, repeat that last sentence.
No, I said, religion, too much religion can be just as bad as none, because some of the callers, I get the impression, think we don't have enough religion. I happen to think in some cases we have too much religion.
Well, we can have that discussion another day. But as far as I'm concerned, I think, and thanks for the call, David, I think this is a positive. I really do. And again, I'm totally against the Ten Commandments posting, and I do think that there should be a separation of church and state. But I think by pretending the Bible didn't exist, which is almost what happened with me in 12 years of public school, it does students such a disservice. It really does. Not from a religious perspective, but from an academic one. All right, Mike Porcelli is here. I think we're also doing students a disservice by not having more of an emphasis on trade education, and so does Mike, and he's been a warrior in trying to get that done, and it looks like he might be making some progress on this. He'll tell us how he's trying to start a new American revolution straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Economists warn that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k as the stock market braces for impact. I'm Larry Kudlow, and I urge you to fortify your savings with physical gold with my friends at Priority Gold. To learn how gold and silver can help diversify your savings, please call 1-800-405-GOLD or just visit PriorityGold.com to get a free gold information guide. That's 1-800-405-GOLD.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit, or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
20 minutes till the top of the hour. This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano, sitting across on the eve of Independence Day from a gentleman who wants to start a new American revolution. Very pleased to be joined in studio by my friend Mike Porcelli, master mechanic, automotive expert, Army veteran, and a longtime proponent of trade education. Mike, it's great to see you.
Good morning, Frank. Thank you.
So what is this about a new American revolution? Are you trying to overthrow the government?
Well, I have to correct you on one thing. I didn't start this.
Okay.
I'm just trying to continue it. I've been fighting for many years. Since I left high school, I've been fighting to bring shop class back to schools because they started taking it out of schools while I was in high school. They tried to keep me out of shop class.
So tell me how teaching shop leads to a new American revolution.
Well, the revolution idea came from freedom. You know, if you're not free to do the work that you like to do, if you couldn't do radio, would you be free?
I wouldn't feel free. I'll tell you that.
Right,
No, that's a good
exactly.
point.
So the idea came to me a couple of years ago on the 4th of July that if we're not free to do the work that we're meant to do, the work that we love to do, we're not really free. And when I read the Declaration of Independence where it says pursuit of happiness, I took that to mean the pursuit of your happiest career.
So you've been talking about the need for trade education for a long time now. By the way, before we talk about what's happening now, why did schools get away from this? I know this was a pretty standard part of most high schools. You had home economics. You also had shop class. When did that change and why did that change?
Back when I was in school, in middle school, everybody had some form of shop class or home economics. While I was there, they started to remove it. My generation, all our parents wanted us all to go to college, and a lot of us did. I did.
And you're not anti-college.
I'm not anti-college. I have 2 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I'm far from anti-college. I'm for all forms of education, but at the right time. Not everybody is meant to go to college right out of high school. I know many people have gone to college. My wife went to college way after high school. Now she's a lawyer. So
nobody's perfect.
I don't hold that against her. But people need the education that best suits them, best suits their talents and abilities.
So the reason it changed at a school level is because there was this desire that and this belief that college heals all wounds and let's try and get as many people in college as possible.
I guess the feeling was at the time college graduates are better than non-college graduates. My father felt that way. He never went to college. He went through the Navy and the war, came home, started the business, had kids, and never went to college. He always regretted that he never went to college.
And when did this change? Was it was in the 70s? Was it the 80s? Was it more recent than that?
Started in the 60s. My high school had great shop programs. We had automotive, we had machine shop, we had printing, we had a lot of shop classes. The only one left is automotive, and it's much less than what it used to be. A lot of schools have eliminated shop classes entirely. I ask everybody I talk to, most people my age had shop class in middle school, some form. It's almost completely gone. Everybody today says their kids have no shop class at all. I have a question about the bicycle from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
They were going to cut it in half. At the rate we're going, we won't have anybody with the ability to cut it in half.
That's a good one. So, Mike, you've been talking about this a lot, in your own radio show over the years, in your columns, and really wherever you could find an audience, letters to public officials. You're not the only one. I've heard John Ratzenberger, who played Cliff Clavin on Cheers, talking a lot about this. I've heard people like Mike Rowe, who's got a whole, a whole enterprise of podcasts and media. He's very well known. He's been talking about this. Given the fact that, and I feel like I hear a lot of people talk about this, editorial pages, others, given the fact that a lot of folks, including you, have been talking about this, have you made any progress? Are there any school districts around the country that are moving in the right direction in bringing this back?
Yes, I visited a high school up in Westchester recently. They're building a whole new building for CTE, Career and Technical Education. I traveled out west over last summer. A lot of schools out there have brought it back or expanding programs. The problem is here locally, the city thinks that the Department of Education thinks they've done enough. They've got CTE programs, but it's not nearly enough. I say that at least 50% of school resources should be devoted to CTE, shop class.
Is there any school district that you could point to anywhere in the country, really, where you say, hey, those guys in XYZ city, they're doing it right. We need something like the XYZ city model.
I visited a school out in Colorado. The entire school, K to 12, is kids can use any kind of shop they want. They have the kids there are building guitars with their hands. From kindergarten through 12th grade, the kids there can use any machine that they're capable of using, and they have the ability to learn how to use things, how to solve problems. I say we solve problems with tools. That's what mechanics do.
Interesting. All right. Now, one of the things that we have heard a bit from, over the last few months is that the new generation, the younger generation, the Wall Street Journal did an article about this back in April. Generation Z, they're calling themselves the tool belt generation. They're saying more young people are choosing trades over college study. And, the journal pointed out that, at a time when all the things that you said, America needs more plumbers, more carpenters, Generation Z is answering the call. I'm imagining you take this as a pretty positive sign.
Absolutely. I went to a trade show recently, a welding trade show. I met some high school students there. They all want to become welders. I met one young lady. She's a junior in high school. She wants to be a nuclear reactor welder. She knows she's going to make $200,000 a year welding nuclear reactors. How many college graduates make that kind of money?
Yeah, that's fair. That is not the one that I see in the mirror.
I met an employer there who wants to hire people to start at $60,000.
So it sounds like there's a note of optimism here that things are turning around a bit.
I'm encouraged. I meet a lot of young people. My students. I interviewed 100 students that came into our program last year. Out of the 100, only one had automotive in high school. Every one of them wanted it. Only one got it. That tells you the status of shop class here in the city in high schools. The DOE needs to do a lot more to bring more resources to meet the need. These kids want to learn. They want to learn trades, but they don't have the resources in the schools to let them do what they want.
You wrote a column back in May saying that CTE is actually key to saving civilization. People may agree with you. They may think you're onto something here. But come on, saving civilization.
I borrowed that line from John Ratzenberger. That's his line.
And so how does CTE save civilization?
Because everything... We keep the lights on. People with tools keep everything running. If when we disappear, there'll be no lights, no cars, no trains, planes, buses, right? No food. Who's gonna harvest the food without tractors?
Yeah, that's not something we can have AI do yet. AI's not there.
The trades can never be replaced by AI.
How come?
Because we need people with hands, skilled hands.
You got to make the machines that replace us all, right?
And who's going to fix the AI robots?
Yeah, that's exactly. Hey, I mentioned Mike Rowe. He was the host of the show Dirty Jobs. I know you followed him. Because he's
my hero.
Such a following, is he having an impact on moving the needle on this at all?
Absolutely. And I see more and more celebrities are now getting on the bandwagon. I met Adam Carolla the other night. He talks a lot about shop class. He did a podcast with Mike Rowe, and it was phenomenal.
Really?
Yeah.
Great. So you saw Carolla. How was Carolla in person?
He's fantastic.
Yeah. No,
he's a big car guy, too.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Talk with Mike Porcelli. Mike, if folks want to learn more about what you're doing, if they want to check out your column or maybe even get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm in all the BQE newspapers, the Queens Ledger. I'm in 8 papers in Brooklyn and Queens. You can get it online. If you Google Porcelli Master Mechanic, you'll find me.
Yeah, Porcelli. What's the next step in all this, Mike? Let's say you've convinced all the audience and they want to be part of your call for a new American revolution. How do they start?
I'm glad you asked. This just came to me the other day. When's the last time massive numbers of workers left the economy? World War II. All the men were taken out of the factories, right? And all the service workers and factory workers, all the men left town, right? Who replaced them? Women. There are more and more women coming into the trades. I mentioned the young lady in high school who wants to be a nuclear welder, right? We need more push to encourage more women to join the trades. So I say we need a program like we had in World War II where the women were instantly trained. When we were attacked in the end of 1941. So in 1942, most of the men left the factories. They were replaced instantly by women who learned on the job right away, right? We need the same kind of program to encourage people.
Hopefully without the war.
Without the war, yeah. We need to, because skilled workers are leaving the trades probably at almost the same rate that they left in World War II, right? So we did it back then. We replaced those workers overnight practically. Why can't we do the same thing now and encourage young people to learn a trade? Not force them into a trade, but a trade that they have the aptitude for, right?
You mentioned New York. I feel like I've heard some discussion from the school's chancellor in New York City that they're trying to move in this direction. I know you're a New Yorker as well. Have they made any progress on this front?
Yes, but slowly.
Slowly.
And I hope it's not going to be too little too late. It's too little too late for a lot of my students who didn't have the opportunity in high school. Now they come to Bronx Community College and they will learn a trade, but they've lost 2 years. They could have been 2 years ahead in their career development.
Yeah. Lastly, a point of personal privilege. You are the best trained mechanic I've ever met. And my wife and I share a car. Our brakes are squeaking. Now, we had the brake pads replaced, but when we had them replaced maybe a month or so ago, they said the rotors are on back order, and apparently they're now in. So I'm bringing this morning, just in a couple hours, to the mechanic to get those rotors replaced. Will that put an end to the squeaking, do you think?
Depends on what the cause of the squeaking is. Mm-hmm. Is it the rotors or is it the pads?
Interesting. All right, Mike Porcelli, thank you. It is always a treat to see you.
Thanks Frank.
All right, we're going to do 15 seconds of fame in a moment. If you want to call in and be heard for 15 seconds, we'll give you an extra second, I'll tell you. We'll make it 16 seconds. You can give us a call at 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. 15 seconds to say whatever you like, within reason, straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. The late, great Andy B., responsible for this song. He mentions aliens there. Yesterday, a Missouri cop, a big shout out, by the way, to all of our listeners on KMOX in Missouri, or 2 days ago, actually. A Missouri cop made first contact with a UFO on its way to Roswell. No, really. The police officer identified two humanoids inside the vehicle and described them as friendly. It's really something you have to see, but there was a flying saucer car that was driving on the highway on its way to a UFO festival in New Mexico, built by a man from Indiana, case in point what Mike was saying earlier. And the police officer made the traffic stop unlike any other, pulling over a UFO-shaped vehicle. And it's really cool. I'm gonna post this article on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Morano fan, and you can take a look. It's really a neat, it's a sight to behold. All right, we're going to give you an opportunity to be heard for 15 seconds, 646-720-0635.
The Other Side of Midnight. This is 15 seconds of fame.
Lisa.
We say good morrow, not good morning, and we say France, not France.
That's right. That's why you and I are kindred spirits, Lisa. Donna.
Hi, Frank. I have 3 children. One went to college, 2 didn't. The kids that didn't go to college make more money than my other daughter.
I can't say I'm shocked.
And Gary says hello.
Mike.
Morning, Frank. Reading the Bible or any book gives you knowledge. Whether you agree or disagree with its content, that's up to you as the reader. To quote Emil Faber, knowledge is good.
Frankie.
Tomorrow is our nation's 248th birthday, and it's also Joey from Ronkonkoma birthday. So consider flying an American flag. And great interview with Mike Porcelli.
Raji.
Listeners who consider Steve Moore's programs to be the very, very worst ever, stop complaining and listen instead to Morano's podcast as well as Katz and Riley's podcast.
Rusty.
Yeah. Next time you have a barbecue, why don't you invite the Rosenbergs?
E. Frank.
Yes, Frank, I know your show is nationally syndicated, but Greg Kelly stated something inaccurate before saying that I was crazy. There was Noguchi Museum here in Long Island City, PS1. In the 19th century, they used to read the Bible every morning. The Dutch children used to pray to Christ with the Bible open.
Thank you, E. Frank. I could spend the next 20 seconds trying to figure out what you said, but my brain is spent. All right. Back tomorrow with a lot of fun stuff for 4th of July. Frank Morano, good day.